Hi there, my name is Manic Lucidity, but you can just call me Manic if you like. A while back I did a video on my journey through Monster Hunter DOS, and this video is a continuation to finish off my time in Jumbo Village and the solo experience of DOS. If you haven't seen that video yet, I'd highly recommend you check it out since there will be some major story spoilers for the solo village quests of Jumbo. I'll have it linked somewhere for easy access for any that haven't seen it yet, and I would love to hear your thoughts or any feedback you may have after watching before you swing back over to this video, if you have the time that is. This video won't have as much to do with my ramblings of systems or mechanics, since most of that is in the first video. This video will mainly cover the fights themselves, and the attacks the monsters do to help those that may be struggling with some of these earlier games, as well as specific topics as they come up. I'll have timestamps in the description as well for ease of access to each of these sections. If you have checked it out though, and you are ready to continue this journey with me, let's just hit the ground running. Picking up where we left off after the end of the first video, we made it our goal to hunt down the mighty Blongonga in the snowy mountains. This beautiful map starts at the base of the mountain in a much colder region of the world. You can work your way up through the caves and tunnels of the mountain to get to your prey, while also encountering obstacles in your path. Most of these tend to be ice blocks or rocks, so you have to take the long way around in some cases, but overall they aren't really too much of an inconvenience unless you are trying to deliver eggs. The Blongonga itself, though, is a massive fang-beast creature that is just as powerful as he is agile. He has an attack where he will rear back and slam the ground, causing tremors around him, multiple different lunges and swipes, a backwards jump that he kicks you with, as well as a massive clothesline that can knock you all over the place a little bit. He'll also dig under the ground and try to pop up underneath you, as well as launch a huge boulder of ice from the ground out towards you. This will also fragment into smaller pieces if it hits the ground or you, but either way it's going to hurt. His most frightening attack, however, in my opinion, is a cone of ice that he can breathe out that will afflict you with a debuff that essentially makes you into a little snowman. After doing some research, I did find out that the way to get rid of this debuff in DOS is to spin in a circle to break out of it a bit faster. It really made me miss the cleansers that we had in later games. You'll also almost always be fighting Blongonga with extra mobs, the Blongos, since they work in a pack dynamic of sorts. Some areas don't have them, but he does have a roar in his arsenal that will allow him to call in some to help him. However, if you do break his fangs, this seems to keep him from being able to summon any more of the Blongos in. Likely a bit of a hint towards that pack hierarchy at play. For example, since the Blongonga no longer has something that places his status among them, why should they listen to him? The way you go about breaking them is a personal favorite of mine as well, which I hope they bring back in future games, being that at least 1 point of fire damage has to be dealt to his fangs to break them at all. I believe it should be more damage to incentivize us as hunters to take advantage of these kinds of weaknesses, but it all works out in the end. It took quite a while, but we were able to take him down with little time to spare. Khezu is the next monster on our list that I decided to go after. Now, putting aside his very interesting body, the Khezu's probably one of the more terrifying creatures we have to put down early on. Khezu is one of the only monsters that has no background music to add to its very eerie and bizarre fight. He has your standard tail whips, pounces, 2 different bites, but what makes Khezu very different and terrifying is its tough hide that causes you to bounce, matched with its stationary attack where it causes electricity to discharge around itself in an AoE. He can also unleash a torrent of electric balls across the floor that can deal very devastating damage. Khezu can also jump to the ceilings in some zones, crawling around, dripping acid from its mouth before it drops down on top of you. Thankfully, as far as I saw though, he is unable to do this in the snowy mountains, mainly just in the swamp. I did also forget to mention that Khezu is a very stretchy guy. His neck can stretch out, giving him more range for both of his bite attacks. One is straightforward, and the other one he goes off to the right and kind of comes down at a slanted left angle. This attack can definitely catch players off guard the initial time they see it happen, so definitely be careful for that, because he can combo into his lunging pounce, basically. Positioning and spacing is very important against Khezu, so once you realize how far away you can be from him and still land your attacks, you'll be set to take him down just as easy. Khezu also has a subspecies, the red Khezu, but we'll cover it more here in a little bit. Rathian, the queen of the land, is up next. Overall, she's not too scary, and an excellent example of a flying wyvern that you can practice and learn very easily. A biting attack and typical charges from her are something to watch out for, as in most cases, this is the attack that you'll likely get hit by. Her charges can come out extremely fast. In other words, she'll do it out of nowhere since there's little to no lead up for the animation, except for in certain specific instances, like after turning towards you. Her spinning tail whip is much like other monsters, but the move to watch out for her is her backflip. The Rathian will usually take to the sky quickly and attempt to do a backflip to slam her tail into you. This attack can also poison you, so take care if you do get hit. To my memory, if you cut the tail off, you won't have to worry about the poison if you do get hit by this move again. To finish off her section of moves, she can launch one fireball in front of her, or will launch 3 fireballs in a forward-facing, middle, then right side, then left side. As mentioned, I consider Rathian a very good wyvern to practice on, as she can familiarize you with a large majority of attacks you will see throughout the game as well. If you get pretty good at taking her on, it can help you greatly in the long run. She also has a subspecies in this game, being the Pink Rathian. Not required, but she is available in Village. I just did not see my point in doing it, but I'll explain that in a bit. For me, this fight against Kushala Daora was finally a true show that I hadn't gotten too rusty for these older versions of Elders. I knew this was a soft finish for the game, since the early part of Jumbo Village centered around Kushala Daora, but of course, we weren't finishing our playthrough here. We start off the fight by throwing our poison knives to get that damage out as quickly as possible and to shut down the aura. I'll be honest, I believe I forgot to bring the lightning rod trap that was given to us for this fight, but I've never been really good with those traps anyways. We used our box flash bombs when we had a good time to, as well as focusing as much damage on Kushala's head as possible. This is a major tactic in the older games, as well as newer games to an extent, and it's mainly just to continually beat Kushala's face, as you can basically lock him into staggers very easily. Shortly after that, we went for the tail hits when we could, even though they were quite a pain to get sometimes for Elder Dragons, just because of how they hold their tails. We did get it pretty close to the end of the hunt though, so I was pretty happy about that. Once we finished this quest, many of the villagers wanted to speak with us, and we were told about some ancient runes by the Wyverian Madam. The feline merchant also had a very mysterious book for sale that spoke of a mysterious tower, and by the end of this quest we finally unlocked a new area to explore as well, that being the Volcano. But we have one more quest to do before that. Our next monster we went to hunt was Plesioth. That's it for this section. Hunt over. Fade to black. Jokes aside though, Plesioth is a major annoyance for me. He is probably the most memed in the entire community because of his massive hitboxes on his hip checks, the fact that his bites can put you to sleep for some reason. You'll likely get hit no matter what when he starts doing his tail spins, because his body is just so massive. And to finish all of that off, if you do stand close, you're likely going to take some insane chip damage from him stomping on you as he walks in place or turns. My advice, aim for the head as much as possible, and go for the legs occasionally when you can, safely. He does have a beam attack that he'll do that leaves him open for quite a bit of punishment. The biggest downside of the hunt, though, is that you are going to be fighting the adds in the area more than him, because he spends a ridiculous amount of time in the water. He'll also waste this time in the water by trying to shoot you with that same exact beam that goes across the entire area of the map, and a sweeping beam that he does from side to side. I also advise trying to take him on during the breeding season at night in the desert if possible, because as far as I know, he doesn't leave the area. But he will reset and go to a little corner of that section of the map, then start swimming back. You won't have to worry about hot drinks since he's in Area 7, and the only other things you'll need are frogs. Yes, frogs. You can find them along the wall of Area 3 that leads into Area 7, and if I recall correctly, it looks like a little pile of stones. You can fish him out of the water along the middle of the bank of Area 7 if he has not noticed you. Crouch over once you've got to the area and cleared it out, and you can play your little fishing simulator. The funnier thing about this is that apparently you can kill Plesioth with the damage it takes from the fishing. I wasn't aware that that was a thing, but damn did it make for a great laugh in the moment. If you want to instead capture him, I believe any trap will do. Just look for his back fin to be laying down. If it's broken, it still looks like it's laying down, because that's his show that he's weak enough. There's also green Plesioth as a subspecies, but again, it's not a required hunt, so if you don't want to do it, don't. But take him on if you want to. I'll cover Purple Gypceros and Red Kezu very quickly, since they are the last subspecies that I hunted in the village. Their moves don't really change much. Mainly, it's just that their animations are faster than the normal variations, especially when they're raging. It will stand out quite a bit. Outside of the extra gear that you can make or upgrade into, they're not required for progression from what I can tell, but they do serve as a bit of a harder fight due to their animation speeds. So if you want to test yourself against them, go ahead and take them on. I did these two mainly just as playing and testing, as well as the Blue Cuckoo, just to see if anything would unlock. But I found out pretty quickly that they weren't required to progress. So I decided after these two that I would cover the other subspecies in the online video when I started working on that in the future. The Volcano is exactly as it sounds, an excessively hot area that you have to watch your back at every turn. Bring plenty of cold drinks to stave off the heat, and watch yourself along the edges of lava. Not even a cold drink will stop you from cooking yourself. There are plenty of Mellings here that love to steal your items, as well as Ioprey, which add to the oppressive environment by poisoning you if you get careless. The area, however, is rich with minerals to be gathered, which could also result in you finding rust stones, which can be changed into weapons at the blacksmith. The Shogun Sionatar was our next victim to take out, though. He can be extremely dangerous with his sharp claws. He'll charge at you with the intent of giving you the most dangerous hug you've ever received, slash at you with his claws in multiple different ways, the most dangerous being the very wide swings that he'll turn his body into. And he'll occasionally throw out a just as dangerous spinning claw sweep that can cover a scary amount of distance. The pucker factor amps up a bit more as well once he becomes enraged, as his claws extend, giving him even more range to slash around with. The most dangerous attack in his arsenal, in my opinion, would be his burrowing strike. He'll burrow underground and wait for a moment. The attack will have him popping up in random spots close to the initial area, where he will pop up and slash at whatever is in front of him. The other side of this attack, however, is that he will focus you down and chase after you as you run away, doing 3 or more attacks across both versions. In some sections of the map, he will also climb under the ceiling and blast water down below him. Breaking his claws and shell is a huge benefit for you as a hunter as well. I spent quite a bit of time farming him to make his armor sets, and his parts do sell for quite a bit. Something to keep in mind as well as you take this creature down is that if you aim to capture him, know that you can only use shock traps on him. The Basarios is a very unique creature that in my opinion has had quite a glow up from these older games. Here, however, he can be quite the infuriating mess of a fight if you aren't using a better weapon for it. In my case, using the greatsword made it so most of my attacks would bounce no matter where I hit. Occasionally I was able to get a few hits in, but overall it just came down to ramming my face into a brick wall, bouncing consistently because I'm just stubborn. The volcano itself is fairly barren for this hunt, and there are explosive rocks all around areas of the map that you should definitely take advantage of for this fight. The Basarios takes advantage of a particular amount of camouflage, which to us can be fairly obvious if you've been paying attention to the details of the volcano. He'll pop up once you get close and possibly damage you if you are close enough to his body. Normally what I'll do in these situations is throw a paintball to get him to pop out. From there, he charges a lot, so in most cases, you'll just have to get out of the way with how much space he takes up. He can bite you, tailspin, and hip check like many other monsters up to this point. His roar is very long and drawn out, so if you get caught by it, you'll flinch for quite a while. And if he is raging, this usually will be long enough to result in you taking damage no matter what. Unless you block. The worst part of this fight is how much waiting there is due to his constant use of his poisonous gas and his sleeping gas that he'll let out from his body in an AoE around himself. He'll also rarely throw a big glove of fire at you, so be careful of that because it does hurt quite a bit. If you have a better weapon, say maybe the lance or sword and shield, you likely won't have nearly as many problems as I did with him. Just mainly focus his stomach as much as you can, since it's less hard, as the rest of him is basically made up of rocks. Doing that, you'll come out the victor much faster than I did. Gravios is much like Basarios, but even bigger. He has the same bites, charges, spin attack, and tail swings that Basarios has, which all hurt quite a bit more, just I would assume because of size and scaling. He'll throw himself into the air occasionally to body slam the ground beneath him, a sleep gas that is the same as Basarios, but sometimes you might not get hit after just because of the size difference. And where Gravios differs from Basarios is that he can make use of an explosive gas around his body that can deal quite a bit of damage if you get caught up in it. You should also be very careful of his massive laser beam, where he winds up and then lets a torrent of fire out in your direction. In most cases, it's very easy to avoid, but be extremely careful if you do get hit by it. You can also chop the tail, but it's not something I focused on for this fight, mainly because I just wanted to get it over with. Thankfully, with his size, hitting him in the stomach is much easier when compared to Basarios. The downside is, while using Greatsword, there were many times where I had to play a game of trading damage, which, with enough defense and healing, it works in the end, as long as you just don't get hit too often. Gravios also has a subspecies fight that I did not go for, being Black Gravios, but overall I do hope that in the future Gravios comes back and gets the same type of love that Basarios did. Overall, the fight for Basarios was very great, and I do think they could do the same for Gravios as well. We go back to the desert to hunt down a Diablos, because the village chief needs a horn from it as a request for our story progression. The hunt for Diablos was easily the most exhilarating hunt of my playthrough. I'll take a moment just to mention that with many of the newer games, I feel most fights lack a special something that DOS has reminded me of. When comparing DOS's Diablos to World or Rise, there's a huge disconnect to me. It is, in my opinion, but I feel that it's well worth mentioning, that a sense of tension is no longer present in the newer games. Diablos' fight across each game has always felt like a dance of death in a way. One wrong mistake, and you may be getting hit by a devastating charge attack or a burrowing attack. His health pool is, or at least feels like it's massive in DOS. And that's how it is in most of the older games as well. I was in this hunt for nearly the entirety of the 50 minutes that were allotted, and I was on the edge of my seat the entire time, rarely getting hit and taking advantage of every possibility. Of course we can still get his horns stuck into walls, and of course we can still cut his tail. Sonic bombs will cause him to be trapped in the ground as always, and we can always use a shock trap to capture him if we want to. But to me, the simple fact that the tenseness of this fight feels non-existent in later games, and that says something to me. It absolutely could just be because of how bloated the health is in the older games, but to be fair, this is a close to endgame monster. I feel that's perfectly fine to have a bit of a bloated health bar. It makes me hope for greater things in the future when it comes to some of these late game monsters, that in all reality may just be something of the past from now on. Regardless, the fight was amazing, and I wouldn't have it any other way with Diablos. He does have a subspecies as well, which is the Black Diablos, and she's nowhere near as nice, so definitely be careful if you go after her. Now, the next hunt is something I've talked about in a few videos. A siege hunt with Lao Shenlong. This quest was quite a pain to unlock though, and I seem to have luckily stumbled upon it because I try to do as much as possible. It does make me think I may have missed something by not doing the other subspecies, but we'll come back to them if I find something out for sure. Throughout the game you have requests that you can complete, usually in a blue tone for the speech bubble. There are red bubbles that also show up that implicate the progression of story for the NPCs, as well as upgrades for the village. To unlock this hunt, I had to fully upgrade the Granny's Forge to allow her 2 associates that could help with her duties, as well as the final request allowing for another individual named the Legendary Artisan, who is Granny's master, to show up after completing another request on occasion. We were also able to dig out the cave to the east of Jumbo Village with the help of another individual due to our progression through the story. He'll ask for a pickaxe after you return from quests, and after a certain number of hunts, it will reflect that he has dug more and more away as a minecart in the cave gets filled up. In this cave, there is a Lao skull with a sword stuck inside that will cause you to fall away if you try to pull it from the skull. I mention all this because as we went through this hunt, damaging the Lao's body, breaking his horn, and being a general nuisance, we met him at the final gate of the fortress. We launched our cannonball, shot our ballista, and deployed the Dragonator to deal massive damage to him. After all that, we still had to go down to face him head on and finish the hunt off once and for all. Our reward for completing this is the sword that was in that very cave, known as the Dragon Seal Sword. This individual that was digging out the cave also gives us rewards after digging segments out as well. And regrettably, I did not get footage of one reward in particular, as it happened during grinding that was done when not recording. He found another one of our sections of the book describing the tower and handed it to us for our continued research. As I had it spoiled for me, I won't disclose how I found the remaining piece of the book mentioning the tower. If you would like to know, I'll leave it in the description as far down as I can to keep from spoiling those that would like to find out for themselves. This was the final stretch of Dose though, Lunastra. We were as ready as we could be. With my trusty Sionatar armor and Sigland greatsword, we were prepared to end this. It started with a journey to the very spire of the volcano for our standoff. Her devastatingly quick charges were beyond dangerous. Her explosive powder left me wishing I had more healing to deal with the damage, and her whipping tail showed no mercy. She would swipe her claws and lunge about to try and take me down, but was not able to best me here. Sigland rang true as it struck her while breathing fire to knock her down for a devastating blow to repel. Our chase then took us to the desert to deal with this pest. Taking devastating damage from her fire aura, we had to be even more aware of her explosions and charging. Lunastra was in no mood for games, and was giving her all to tear me down where I stood. We then forced her to run with a well-placed strike to her crown, allowing us to finally bring things to an end at her nest, the tower, that we have been researching all this time. These ancient runes stand tall today. ancient knowledge just waiting to be discovered. But not this day. This day our goal is in sight. We have to take Lunastra down, or so many people could be in danger. Marvelous runes, rare creatures such as white velociprey, identified later as Giaprey, Shakalaka, who can be devastating in large numbers, and Remobra, which tend to be present around Elder Dragon activity. They are all to be remembered for later excursions. Now, we focus on Lunastra. She's been heavily weakened by our battles, so you'd think she wouldn't put much of a fight up. But oh, was I wrong. Even though she could easily escape if she wanted to, this is her home. This is her territory. How dare I, an insolent human, come here and show my face after causing her such embarrassment? You will learn your place here, human, even if it costs me my everything. Being carded happens, but we always get back up. At least twice anyways, before a failed hunt. Getting sloppy is almost expected, but it can't be helped sometimes. Nerves get to us, and we start missing more and getting hit more often. In the frustration, we eventually just decide to commit and end things as quickly as we can. That feeling of overcoming something that has that challenge to it. Something that we've been focusing on and putting so much effort into finally ending. A quest complete, and the ending of something amazing. This is the spoiler warning I will give for post-game of Dos's village quests. Heavy spoilers are ahead, so only watch from here on if you don't mind being spoiled. We could call the video here and praise Monster Hunter Dos for the amazing game that it is. But for me, it had to go ahead and take it one step further. Once we've made it back to Jumbo, we realize that the village chief has left to set up a new village elsewhere. Though it's sad to no longer have him here, the Wyverian Madame will make sure the village is taken care of in his absence. We take our time talking to everyone when the Master Shipwright calls us over after having completed all of the requests to finish the boat that he's been working on. Not only to open better trade routes for merchants, but, to my surprise, to visit a very special place. A place that he describes as the place where the tale of the hunters began. In this moment, I was at a loss for words. I wasn't sure how things would go, and I wasn't, thankfully, I wasn't spoiled for what was to come. In my excitement, I went ahead and boarded the vessel to see where he was going to take us, and held on for something crazy to happen. And boy oh boy, something crazy happened indeed, and I can't wait to show you. Home. A place that I would consider home, to an extent at least. Kokoto Village, the village where my journey began almost 20 years ago now. I was speechless, and so glad that this was not spoiled for me. Funnily enough, I had actually gotten up from my chair and had to walk away for a minute. Kokoto Village means a lot to me, and to see Dos paying respects to it and bringing us back here meant that our journey wasn't quite over yet. The King of the Skies was our next target. but we'd have to head to the forest and hills to get there. A beautiful map that I was ecstatic to be coming back to in Dos. Much like Kokoto Village, it was like seeing an old friend that I haven't seen in years. The rolling hills, the sections of forest and vegetation, its cliff face, all breathtaking in the moment for me. We had a goal though, and couldn't sightsee for too long. Rathalos had to be brought down from his skies. A fight most hunters are familiar with nowadays, but a little slower and abusable. Rathalos, of course, has your standard charge attacks, bites, tailspin, and fireball like Rathian, but he'll also take to the skies and let fire rain in your direction all the same, or dive at you with his talons in an attempt to poison you. Ironically, you can abuse this attack in the older games by standing underneath his shadow to set yourself up for some easy damage as he lands. He'll also circle the skies to dive at you, which in most cases is easy enough to avoid. He's not too tough of a fight overall, but is pretty bulky for this point in the game, being endgame of course, but taking him down is no easy task, and still a rewarding one all the same. Azure Rathalos is also present, but I did not fight him yet either, as I had stopped fighting the subspecies, but do plan on fighting him in the future. Moving along to the next hunt at request of Kokoto Village's chief is the Monoblos. Monoblos takes us back to the desert, not as bulky as his two-horned counterpart, but just as fast and deadly. He has all the same attacks as Diablos, as well as a stab he will do with his horn on occasion. Much like Diablos as well, he can rage very quickly as he gets lower in his health pool. It will also display, while raging on his crest, with a few red dots to signify that he is raging. Overall though, just like Diablos, a very fun, fast-paced fight, even if it didn't last as long as Diablos. He also has a subspecies in Dos in the White Monoblos, not required, but it is quite terrifying with its insane speeds. I am unsure if White Monoblos is a female in heat like the Black Diablos. We do know that Black Diablos is a female in heat, but I honestly can't remember if it's the same for the White Monoblos, or if it's been confirmed like it has with Black Diablos, but very interesting knowledge all the same. Of all the spawns of this world, it had to be Kirin. Kirin is a monster that I hated in the older games. Its tough hide not really being the issue, but still causing bounces if hit. Its speed and animations causing a lot of damage for barely grazing you. Its sporadic lightning attacks that it will call from the sky, being in a random pattern around it, placed in front of it a little bit, or directly on top of its body and striking multiple times. When it rages, it glows an almost piercing white color and gains quite the speed boost that will leave you reeling if you are not prepared for it. Its new speed gives very few moments that you can get clean hits in, not including how much faster it can get its damage out, making it extremely unsafe for damage attempts. Kirin is just quite the problem overall, but as long as you focus its horn and stay vigilant and careful, you'll take it down in no time. The downside of Kirin is that you unfortunately only get 2 carves off of its body. So if you want the armor set or weapons, be prepared to fight it quite a lot. Teostra is another Elder Dragon and the mate of Lunastra. He couldn't have been very thrilled about what happened. We started the hunt by heading to the bowels of the volcano again, where things kicked off just as quickly as they did with Lunastra. He has all the same attacks as her as well, just seeming to have a bit more of a charging preference. His explosions can be a little harder to read at times, but still allow to damage him after, although in some cases he will charge right after doing so. Things do get pretty dicey in the Volcano as I carded because of an underestimated hitbox on the Fire Breath and a controller mishap that caused me to swing accidentally. The fight was drug out longer than I would have liked because he spent a lot of time standing on top of the lava and would not leave it. But that's just how it is sometimes for the older gens. After a bit, we were able to finally chase him down until I was able to repel him. In the desert fight, it was very fast-paced and bounced between two larger sections just like Lunastra did. This time things went much more smoothly as I took my time and relaxed. I even cut off his tail to spite Lunastra since I couldn't cut hers off. Shortly after, Teostra was defeated and led us to our next target. After clearing up some quests from before, I realized that the village chief of Kokoto had some words he wished to have with me, mentioning a final elder dragon for me to take on. A very rare one to sight at that. Chameleos was its name. Chameleos was the strangest of all the elder dragons I fought in Dose. Granted, he's always been very strange, but since this was his debut, his fight is very different from what it is now. To start with, he is always invisible in Dose. On occasion, or with certain attacks, he seems to become visible for brief moments, where it gives away his position. He does consistently have a shimmer to his body in the hunt, so when skating around, it's something you will have to keep an eye out for to be able to tell where he is. He can be knocked out of the invisibility, but that's not something I was able to accomplish, as I was not using a dragon element weapon, which is needed to break the horns of elder dragons. He opened the fight with a torrent of green liquid, which completely drained my stamina. A harrowing idea for me, since I tend to not make stakes myself. I did also run out of stakes after this hunt, so I had to improvise a bit going forward. Believe me, I'm working on it for older games. It's just something I despise doing due to spending so much time when I was younger making them and selling them for money, since I was a dumb kid and didn't know how to manage my in-game money. This breath attack also applies a very interesting debuff called vocal cord paralysis, which prevents you from using the in-game chat. I only found this out from the comments on that video, but this is honestly such a great idea for this game, especially for the online side of things. It could definitely cause some issues if a hunting party isn't like using Discord or something like that. Every swing I made towards the Chameleos bounced unless I hit him in his head or around his chest or lower front arms, which isn't inherently a bad thing unless you are a very reactive and defensive player like I am. I tend to not like bouncing, especially since I usually use Greatsword in the older games. The Greatsword has a very long bouncing animation. Chameleos can also attack with his tongue to steal items from your inventory. He'll do an attack that lashes twice with it, or after standing for a moment, he will launch it straight out in the direction looking at you. He also has an attack where he will launch into the air and let loose a poisonous gas below him. But the most interesting thing about Chameleos is that his theme only plays when he is enraged, which I absolutely love. His theme is so good. It's amazing, and in my opinion, it is the best theme in the game by far, even better than Lunastra's. After repelling him once, it quickly led to a hunt of head sniping and trying to attack as much as possible at his front legs for damage, eventually leading to his defeat, consistently with bouncing. After going back over the footage, I'd definitely have to say it was one of my favorite fights, especially for a debut Elder Dragon. And especially when you compare it to how different it becomes later in the series. I do hope they maybe take some inspiration from the previous iteration and bring some of that back to give him a bit more of his, I guess, out-ishness. It's hard to put that into words. The lone wolf, Yen Garuga, is one of the monsters in the game that requires a particular way to unlock it. Normally, you'd have to connect a copy of Monster Hunter Portable with your game to unlock the quest, but the Break Arts team had a way of getting it onto the game for others to enjoy, along with the English patch if you are so inclined to do so. Yen Garuga has always been a menace ever since he was introduced to the games. He's fast, aggressive, and doesn't seem to have an off switch until he finally goes down. You'll need to focus his head to deal good damage, and the only way you are getting that tail cut is if you focus on what seems to be the very tip of the tail. He launches fireballs similar to Rathian in a pattern of 3 or 1, and he does a very similar type of backflip that will poison you. He has a peck attack similar to Cuckoo, and the worst of it seeming that he will enrage extremely quickly as he takes damage, similar to Diablos and Monoblos. The lower he gets, the more often he rages, as most times it will happen after taking one hit. I always tend to hold Garuga to a very high standard because his fight is extremely tense. His speed allows for him to keep up with you very easily, and sometimes it seems like he'll do an extra turn to correct before going for a huge charge or fireball. The worst bit of his fight in the jungle, unfortunately, was the area. It was filled with Velociprey that, no matter how many I or Garuga took out, they just kept respawning. He hits insanely hard, and I feel it was a perfect challenge to finish off Jumbo Village's quests with. Monster Hunter DOS was something very special, and I do plan on replaying it in the future. I tend to replay these games a lot, so it's nothing new aside from deciding when I'll do it. I'm not sure which Monster Hunter game I'll be doing one of these for next, but I'll be sure to keep y'all updated on that front with videos and maybe over on my Twitter. There were many functions that I didn't take too much part in because I didn't realize they were important. The first thing I'd say is check the bulletin board in Jumbo after every quest. It updates regularly, and in my case, thankfully had all the information still available to read. It expands a bit more, giving you information about other villagers, as well as many tips, tricks, and story updates. My only complaint would be with the more archaic request system that seemed to be a very random chance of having the story progression ones pop up. Maybe they only popped up after doing a certain amount of other requests, but I honestly can't say for certain. I just kept doing the quests until, or the requests until the story progression ones popped up and completed them so I could make sure that I had everything done. There is also a mini game that you can play with the Wyvern Madame that I was aware of, but not to the extent that was pointed out to me by someone in the comments. After completing the minigame, she will unlock a bonus menu option on the quest menu that likely would have helped me immensely when trying to find the Elder Dragons for my videos. I did play the minigame beforehand and unlocked one extra menu option, but I did not realize on repeat completions as I progressed more bonuses would be added. For now though, I've gotten everything set up to continue playing online through the MHOldschool servers, and I can't wait to see all the differences on the online side of things and what it has to offer, including hunts that are likely hidden away from me and some interesting systems that the online takes even more advantage of over the village quests. To finish this video off, I'd like to give a very special thanks to Lou Tyrannus and Canadia for all the help over the entire series. They've been very active in the comments, helping me out with tidbits of info regarding Monster Hunter DOS, and offering information when compared to older and recent games. In fact, many of the systems I just mentioned were pointed out to me by them, and that allowed me to relay that information to you for your own playthroughs if you decide to try DOS out. I'll have their Twitter accounts and channel info in the description, so please check them out because they absolutely deserve it. The Break Arts team's webpage is going to be in the description as well, so if you're interested in playing Monster Hunter DOS, their patch is a full English patch and is amazing, extremely thorough, of seemingly all of the content in the game. I'd also recommend checking out the MHOldschool website, as well as the Discord, which I will also have them linked in the description. And as mentioned before, there will be one more compiled dose video like this one down the line, focusing on all of the online side of things. I'll also aim to have any hunts that I did not do in Village done online and probably in Village, and get them uploaded when they are completed. That way there's nothing left unhunted. This includes any that would also be online exclusive. I don't know when I'll be doing these videos, but keep an eye out for them every now and then, because I'm going to be grinding a lot off screen, and it's all going to be a big cluster. The grind will likely be long, but that's what we do best as hunters, in all honesty. To finish things off especially, I can't begin to thank everyone that has come to my channel and watched all of my content for Dose over the last few months, but know that I appreciate you all greatly and will try to continue making content like this, as well as in a series format of full playthroughs, so I hope you stick around for everything to come in the future, even if it isn't only just Monster Hunter. I do like a lot of games, so there may be quite a variety. For now though, happy hunting, and I'll see you guys all in the next one. Laters.